Hi, my name's Alan Smith from bloggersguides.net, and this is one of a series of webcasts looking at working with service-orientated stuff in BizTalk Server 2009. I'm actually using one of the betas of BizTalk Server 2009. It's probably a few weeks before they actually release it, or a month before they release it. So it's fairly close to what's going to be going on in the actual release version. There shouldn't be any real changes. The design that I'm looking at today is a service aggregator. So I'm going to be building an orchestration that is going to call out to several Windows Communication Foundation services. So I'm going to be using the WCF adapter, some of the orchestration designer tools to create these, and I'm going to be also working in the admin console to configure these ports. The scenario is fairly basic. I've got my client here, I've got my service aggregator orchestration that I'm going to be building here, and three services here. So somebody who is booking a place at a conference to attend a conference, they want a place at the conference, they want a flight to and from the conference, and they also want a hotel to stay in at whilst they're there. So when they make that booking, it's going to book all of these three things using that service here. So a message comes in, we call the conference, we call a flight service, and we call a hotel service, and return the data to the client. The implementation that I'm going to be doing, don't start thinking that I'm not building it in a good way or not building a performant orchestration. That's going to be taken in a later webcast. So all I'm doing here is basically calling these three services in sequence. I'm not putting in any error handling or optimization there. The scenario for this project is the conference booking message coming in and triggering an orchestration, and we're going to make calls out to the three services from the information that's based in this message. I've created the process here, so I've got an orchestration called book attendee, which is receiving a message of type conference booking, and that's going to activate the orchestration. I'm going to start up the three services, and I'm hosting these services in a Windows Forms application. And the advantage of doing that is it's very portable. We don't need to worry about installing to IIS, and I can also very easily see the number of flights booked, the number of hotels booked, and the number of conferences booked, and that's going to be very useful when we're testing the services. I've got the URLs to the service here, so I can take the conference service and just check that that is running by pasting it into the browser window here, and then we can see that everything's working fine with that service. So the first thing I need to do is to add references or proxies to these services that I'm going to be calling from within my process. And you can do this, you can go in here and just take the add generated items and select to consume a WCF service. But doing it in the root of your project, especially when you've got a lot of services, is going to generate a lot of files, so it's good to have a cleaner project structure. So I'm going to drop on a new folder called service ref, and I'm going to go to the first one, which is conference service, and just drop on a folder for that. Now within this folder I can right click and take the add generated items option, and I'm going to select to consume a Windows Communication Foundation service. We've got options of using either metadata exchange or WSDL files, and because I'm exposing the metadata publicly, I can just use the metadata exchange pattern. And I'm going to paste in that URL, click on get, click on next, and here's the actual namespace. We'll leave that with the defaults, and click on import. So within my project you can see it's generated quite a few files here, and we'll just take a quick look through and see what those are. I've got a binding file, and this is very useful when we're going to be creating the ports, because there's a lot of things to set in the ports when you're using the WCF adapters. I've got an orchestration. Now this is an empty orchestration, and it's being used to actually store the types. So I've got some multi-part message types for the interchanges with the service, and I've got an actual port type called the iConference service, which is configured to configure that port. I'm not going to provide any implementation in that orchestration. It's just a placeholder for those various types. We've got another binding. This is a custom binding file, which is used if we are using a custom adapter. So I'm using WS-HTTP as the binding. So this binding here will use the WCF WS-HTTP adapter. And this is the equivalent binding, which is configured in the WCF custom adapter, which allows us to make more changes, and we can make more modifications. I typically use the simpler WCF WS-HTTP binding. And we've got some schemas. This is a schema describing the messages that we can pass in. We're going to send in a conference message and receive a conference confirmation message. This is some of the types that are going to be used in the actual services, the XSD types. And this is the actual methods here. So we've got the book conference response, cancel conference booking, cancel conference response there. The messages that we can use to interact with the service. So I'm going to need to add a couple more web references here for my other services. So we've got the flight service. I'm going to do much the same procedure here. Generate a new folder called flight SVC. Add generated items, consume WCF service. Just go through here again, paste in the URL to the flight service. Click on Get and run through and add that. And lastly, the hotel service. Okay, so I've now got the 3 proxies added to my project. So I can just basically zip up that folder, collapse that, and it's giving me a fairly clean project structure, and I can go in and examine these values if I do need access to them. So now we're going to call the services from the orchestration. I'm going to right click on the port surface and drop on a new configured port. Flight service port, click on next. Now when it comes to the port type, I'm going to choose an existing port type because we've got the port type for these 3 services here. I'm going to take the flight service and click on next. I'll be sending a request and receiving a response there, and we're going to leave this binding on specify later. Click on next and click on finish here. I'm going to do the same thing for the other 3, so new configured port, which will be conference service port on the conference service, sending and receiving, next, finish, and lastly the hotel. Okay, so I've got my ports there. Now if you've been looking through and building web services before, you may have been doing this sort of procedure. You will construct a message, you will add a send shape, you will then add a receive shape, and then you'll think about defining what messages you're going to be sending. So you click in the messages section here, and I'm on a low resolution here, so I'm just going to expand this actual window here. And what you'll do is typically add a new message and then go to the actual message type. Now this is where it gets a bit challenging when we're working with web services, because I've got loads of different message types for all these different services. I've got to scroll all the way over here to look at the actual different types and make the actual selections for what I'm going to be calling to actually make calls out to these services, so the flight and flight confirmation messages as well. I've also got some multi-part message types, so if I go down into the multi-part message types, I can also select these input messages and output messages. And it can be very confusing to actually select which message we're going to be using. So I'm not going to do that method. What I'm going to do is to actually delete that message there. And I'm going to do some things in a slightly different order than is suggested here. So I've got a send port here and a receive port here, and I want to call this method here on the conference service called book conference. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to link the ports up to the link the actual ports onto these send shapes and receive shapes. And if you're watching the messages folder when I do that, I'm going to link the first send shape, and we get a new message automatically created for us. And if you go down and look in the message types, you can see that is a book conference input message that has been selected correctly for us. And if I link the receive onto the response there, it's generating another message, and if you look at the message type there, that's a book conference output message. So what I can do is just name these messages. So I'm going to call them book conference. This is the response message, and this is the request message. And I've got my two messages. And that is, firstly, it's a lot quicker than doing everything manually. Secondly, it's a lot less error prone. You've got no chance of getting the wrong message. The way this works is the orchestration understands what type of message we're using on here. You can see that this is a cancel conference booking input message. And so when you link it to the port, the orchestration designer just automatically creates your messages for you. It's a much quicker way of doing things. Okay. So I'm actually going to set these, and when you actually make the automatic linking, it automatically assigns the right message to the right send shape here. So it's very easy. I'm going to just rename that send, and I'm going to rename the receive shape there. I'm going to do the same thing for the other three services. So I'm going to right click and add the sends and the receive. So this is a send, and drop on a new receive. Link them up to the actual items, get the new messages. The messages will need to be renamed. So this will be SG book flight REQ. And book flight response message there. So I'm going to just rename these sender and receive shapes here. So this one will be book flight request and book flight response. And I'll pause the video whilst I do the same thing for the hotel service port. Okay, so that's all done. I've got all my request and response messages here. I've got my orchestration here with the various send and receives. But if I do a build, I'm going to get use of unconstructed message popping up here, because we haven't actually constructed any of these messages. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one map to construct all of these messages, just to make this as quick as possible. And you typically would maybe use 3 maps if you're concerned about maintainability. But using one map will allow me to design the orchestration very quickly, and it also may improve on the performance. So I'm going to drop in a construct message and a transform shape here. So in a construct message shape, we can construct more than one message, and I'm going to select to construct the conference request, flight request, and the hotel request message. So it's all 3 request messages that are going out for my web service in that one message construct. So construct the request messages, and I'm going to generate a map that can transform all 3 to 1. So this is going to be the conference booking to request messages. Now the source message is going to be my conference booking. That's what's coming in and activating my orchestration. Destination message is going to be the conference request, the flight request, and the hotel request. And I'm going to OK that. And I've got this when I click OK, launch the BizTalk mapper, so it's going to construct that mapper and load it up. Now this map is quite different from the maps you may have seen when you're generating them in a regular project. You can only generate these maps within the orchestration here. It's not a new feature of 2009. You've been able to do it in all versions of BizTalk server, but it can be useful. It's more commonly done for sort of merging 3 input messages into one output message. So I'm going to run through and link up this map. It's not a webcast on mapping, so I'm going to press pause as I actually run through and build up the map. So I've built up the map, quite simple. I'm just doing stuff like the out and the return data of the flight. The out day is going to be the start day -1, so the attendees are going to arrive in town the day before the conference ends. And the return date for the flight is going to be the conference date plus the number of days duration of the conference date. So they fly out on the evening when the conference finishes. I'm making a lot of assumptions here about sort of cities and names and bookings and stuff like that, but that's not really important for the purposes of the exercise. So I'm going to save everything and just check that we've got a successful build. Cool, seems to be fine. What I'm going to do is to just aggregate the responses that are coming back from the web service. Each web service method will return some kind of confirmation message. So what I want to do is to aggregate together those confirmation messages and send them out to the actual folder when we make the booking. I'm going to pause the recording whilst I do this, but I will explain afterwards what I've done. So to construct the response message, what I've done is generated a message called booking confirmation, and what I'm doing is just taking the responses from these three web services, aggregating them together in one map with the conference, the flight, and the hotel booking references, so we get those reference numbers coming back here. And I've plugged that map in at the bottom of the orchestration here, and all we need to do now is to send out that confirmation message. So I'm going to drop on a send shape, and we're going to be sending out the booking confirmation message, and I'll rename the send shape accordingly. And I'm going to drop on a new configured port, which will be confirm out, confirm port type. I'm not really bothering with a naming convention, I'm just trying to get this done fairly quickly. I will be sending, next, and finish. And I can link this up to the actual send port that I've got down there. Cool, so if this builds, we should be ready to deploy. So I'm just going to right click and deploy this to its BizTalk application. I've got it signed with a strong name key, and I've got the application name configured, so I should be able to just click on deploy. And that went fine. So in the admin console, I've got my service aggregator application. I've got a bunch of orchestrations there, but I haven't got any messaging channels at all. What I can do is start to actually construct the ports that I'm going to be using. This is the main orchestration, and as I mentioned, we've got these three placeholder orchestrations. Now it is a bit confusing that these guys appear in the admin console. You're going to get people ringing you up and saying, you know, this orchestration isn't started, you know, what does this orchestration do? It does nothing, it is just a placeholder. But it can be good to just actually bind these orchestrations to the actual host instance. It doesn't make any difference to the actual functionality of your application, but it does mean that you can start and stop the orchestrations there. I think if you play around, you can actually hack the orchestration files, so you do still get the port types, but they don't appear in the actual designer. And that might be something to test out. I think that's the way that the SOAP adapter does it. The actual, when you generate a SOAP proxy, it has an orchestration that isn't really configured as a normal orchestration and does not appear here, but it does have the actual port types available. So I'm going to look at binding the main book attendee orchestration here. Now in the bindings, it's going to be easy to generate my receive port here. All I do is generate a new receive port, which will be booking in. I'm going to have a new receive location, which is going to be booking in file. And I'm going to go down to the actual location where I'd configure this in my project. So this is going to be projects, service aggregator, docs, and OK that. And I'm going to choose copy star.xml to pick up any files that I generate as copies in that folder. And I'm going to remember to take the XML receive pipeline. New send port, confirm out file. I'm going to go down using the file adapter down to that same directory. And I'll just do it as conf %message ID, %message ID %of in case we need to send any other messages out. And I can leave pass-through transmit there. I can OK that. Now configuring these, if I go in and try to generate a new send port, I'm going to be using the WCF WS HTTP adapter. And now if I go in the configuration stages, this is where most people start to find the WCF adapters challenging. I have to configure my URL, which I suppose I can copy and paste here from this actual folder here. And then I have to configure the SOAP action header. Now this is quite complex to get right. It's a chunk of XML that links the promoted operation name property in your outgoing message to the actual SOAP action on the web service, and that is challenging to get right. Also the import identity can be hard to configure as well. Things like the binding, we've got all these timeouts, messaging coding, whether it's transactional, all these kinds of stuff that we've got in the security settings, settings for generating proxies, and how we're going to be formatting the message. So I'm not actually going to generate the send and receive ports using those methods here. what I'm going to do is just click apply to commit those two changes in my orchestration. And if you remember, when we added our service references, we got these binding files which do have all of the port configuration for that web service. So the easiest way to get those ports is to import those binding files. You can see I've just got one send port there. If I right click here and take import bindings on the service aggregator project, I'm going to go down to C: projects, service aggregator in here, and I'm going to find in the actual service ref in conference service these two bindings. Now this is going to be using the WS HTTP adapter, this is going to be using the WS custom adapter, sorry, this is going to be the WCF WS HTTP adapter which I want to use, and I'll click on open there. And you can see we get that new send port generated. Import bindings again, and we just drop up and take the flight service, and that's that port. Import bindings a third time, and we go and take the hotel service reference. And we've got all of those included now. So now it's easy to go back to the orchestration here, double click on this, take the bindings, and we should have those generated here. So this is conference, and we take the conference. For flight, I'm going to take flight, and for hotel, I'm going to take the hotel service and the BizTalk server application host. Cool, so I should be able to start my application now, and then we can go off and test it with a few messages. So looking in at these send ports, if I double click on one of these that we've created from the binding file, the name is a bit unwieldy, but we can always change that. And if we go into the configuration here, you can see that it has selected the correct address, it has selected these SOAP options here, the actual SOAP action header. So the book conference action will map to tempuri.org, iConference service book conference, and cancel conference booking there. And it's got all these bindings, parameters, security parameters, proxy and message stuff that has actually been set from the actual service description. So hopefully everything should be working to consume that service here. Okay, so to test my orchestration, I've got my form, which I've got here, which has the flights, number of flights, hotels and conferences booked. And I'm going to go in to the actual folder here, which was, I think, the docs folder here in the conference aggregator, and I've got an actual test message which I can send in. I haven't really put any meaningful values in here, but that will just generate some actual data that we can use to test this. So I'm going to sort of set the windows so we can see everything that's going on. And what should happen if I generate a copy of this message, this is why I was using copy star, it's going to consume that message, and you'll see one conference, one flight and one hotel booked. And we see the actual confirmation coming out here with these three messages coming out here. And what I can do is just delete this and run this again, and it should run faster the second time. So we've got all three booked, and the conference has come out here. Now I always recommend stress testing stuff. Don't just assume everything's going fine if you can send one message through. So I've got 128 messages here. I'm just going to copy these guys and drop them into the docs folder. So we should be going up to 130 on all of these service calls as the orchestrations rattle through and process those. So it's booked all the conferences, it's running through and booking the flights at present. And notice that all the orchestrations are running in parallel here, so it's 128 orchestration instances that are pretty much in the same phase of execution as the orchestration is executing them. It can be useful to understand at times how the orchestration engine works. Cool, so we should get 130 messages here, 128, and then these two. Yep, 130 objects, seems to be working fine. So a few points to learn there. Firstly, when you're creating the service references, create them in separate folders, not in the sort of same folder as your the actual root folder of your project with all the other artifacts. You'll find that that keeps your solution a lot cleaner, and you can actually delete and remove and update those actual service references a lot easier. Let the orchestration designer add your messages for you. So don't go right-click new message and then start looking around for the message type amongst all the other message types. It's quite challenging to do that, and you can easily get the wrong message type. So the sequence to go through is to add your service port, add the send and receive shapes, and then when you make the link between the send and receive shape and the service port, it will automatically generate your message and assign them to the correct port. All you've got to do is to rename those messages and then construct them. Lastly, use the bindings that are created when you add the service reference to the project to actually generate those actual ports. A lot of people I know have sort of fallen into the trap of trying to configure things manually and not being able to get all the settings correct. So the bindings is an easy way to actually generate those actual send ports in the administration console.